All right, we're going. Hi, everyone. Hey, I'm Lara Buelow, author of Mostly Unanswerable Questions, my very first book that officially launches August 13th, 2024. I'm an artist and a coach. This is an interview series with the folks who have endorsed the book and supported the book as it comes to fruition. Mostly Unanswerable Questions is a life advice book based on a snail mail project that happened in collaboration with the Keep Writing Project out of Portland, Oregon. And I feel very lucky today to say that I am talking to Hope Amico of the Keep Writing Project. So I believe that I was first introduced to Hope's work through a mutual friend in New Orleans. And then since then, I have been a subscriber to the Keep Writing Project, which is a monthly snail mail subscription. All right, Hope, I am so excited to be chatting with you. Give us your own intro and tell us more about the Keep Writing Project.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Hope. I am an artist and writer and teacher in Portland, Oregon, by way of New Orleans and also Oakland, California. And if you go far enough back, New Hampshire. But I started the Keep Writing Project in 2008 when I started school. I went to LSU, Louisiana State University, for printmaking. I was already in my 30s. I had a lot of friends. Um, and I wanted to be able to send them mail. So I've been sending a postcard every month since 2008. I am still going. I just had a 15-year anniversary party last November. Um, and I also teach classes in letterpress and collage and writing and creative practice and write about, whew, I always think I'm writing about creative practice, but then I'm actually just writing stories about things that have happened to me. So a little of both.
Yeah, that's amazing. 2008 and your 15-year anniversary. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I'm like, I've always thought that I've been had like a committed snail mail kind of practice, but that's like, I don't know, when I think about your archives, I'm like, epic. I mean, how does it feel? How does it feel to you?
Oh, well, so this summer I got a small grant from the Regional Arts and Crafts Council in uh, Oregon to archive my work. So I've had this small archive on Instagram that I don't tell anyone about that has maybe 30 of the 180 something cards, but I've been working on archiving all 180 cards plus posting them to Instagram and also on my website so that they're doubled and not so less reliance on Instagram for it. Uh, and just catching up with responses. I was way behind. So I photograph each response, and then they are posted to a Tumblr site in groups. So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, it's really fun to go back and look at them because it's fun. I've been writing like little stories about each one, and I usually write about 5 at a time. So it's kind of a continuous story of the project. That's really fun for me. I don't know how much other people care about how I printed something or why I did something or what I was thinking, but it's been exciting for me and fun to go back and also just very affirming, like, oh, right, I've been doing this thing for a very long time. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Is it satisfying? Do you like feel good about it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm often in the thick of it because it's monthly. So I'm always like, right now feels weird because one, I already printed the risograph layer of a card with, and someone is printing the letterpress part, and we're collaborating, and it should be sent to me in a week or two. And I don't need to write August's yet, and June's is out, and so there's this weird lull where, like, I guess everything's okay, but it just often feels like I'm juggling like at least one collaboration and trying to post responses and trying to keep up with the archive and design a new card and come up with a question that I haven't asked before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, like a monthly thing is like an alarming amount of work.
Yes.
I have so many questions that I could ask about getting into the weeds in that, but also I'm thinking like, especially with this written story for each postcard, I'm like, we got to get you published. Like, we should be sending that project to like a publisher.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely been an idea. I've just never wrapped my brain around what I would 180 cards is a lot. And there's I mean, and more come every month. So I've been thinking of like, how can I make this into a book since like, I don't know, probably card 120. And so since then I have 60 more cards. So, and then plus anywhere from 10 to 50 responses for each month. So, yeah, I've been thinking about I haven't really come up with a way that I've been excited about or had energy for to put
Yeah.
this, but maybe these
Man.
short stories about them, they could be linked as one long story.
Yeah, I feel like we need to get you, like, on the phone with the guy from Post Secret and be like, "Who's your publisher? How did you edit your insane project?"
Yeah.
Okay, so before I get totally derailed on on, like, what an amazing book project this would be, um, tell us more about like well, let me jump into this question. Like, how do you hope that your business will change the world? Like, what's your, like, big vision for the Keep Writing project and your art?
Um, I really just want people to slow down a little and think about things. I try to ask questions that are at once can be granular and applied to larger things. So I found that asking really big, broad questions, people struggle to answer them, and asking very specific things, people can't always relate. So I'm trying to find this balance in every question where I'm like, how can you slow down in your world for a minute and observe something or think about a thing or think about your relationship to someone or something in a way that you can't maybe take for granted and just think about it a little more and just have a little more compassion and empathy. Uh,
Mhm.
and just the act of writing something down takes a little more time rather than just thinking about something. So just the time it takes to like sit and write something and drop it in the mail just is a it's slower than posting something on the internet. So I like that's my hope that people enjoy tactile things, make connections with other people, and just kind of slow down and think a little more and about how they interact with people.
So I feel like this is very much like how I think about things, and I like love that about the Keep Writing project and all of your work. But tell me a little bit more about like what's the change that you want to see in the world? Like, why is it important to you for people to slow down?
Oh, I think especially when I started, I don't think I had a Facebook page when I started. I mean, there was Facebook, but I didn't have one. Um, and I just think the like internet and social media just speeds up our interactions and speeds up our reactions to people. So people react very quickly to anything they hear, and people are quick to judge. And some of that you got to just filter stuff out, and that makes sense. You just be like, that's a thing for me, that's not a thing for me. But that can become very divisive. And so um, I had a card a number of years ago about saying hi to your neighbor. So, like, I had moved to a new place and I didn't know any of my neighbors. And, like, in moving around a lot, I don't always know my neighbors. And that kind of like connecting with someone who may not agree with you about things, who might think differently about things, but then having this personal connection gives you a little empathy for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Um, yes, and like the tactileness. I just, yeah, such a big fan of your cards. What made you start gosh, I like even when I talk about both of them, like what made you start the Keep Writing project
Mhm.
and your art has been like in parallel or was it pre the Keep
Um,
Writing project?
I started making zines and writing when I was in my teens. Um, I did a little bit of printmaking in my 20s, mostly relief printmaking. Um, and I made a little, but I didn't do very much with it. I mostly thought of it as a way to make nicer covers for my zines. And then in 2005, I was in New Orleans. There was a hurricane and a flood, and because of that, uh, I got hyper focused on some things, and some of those things were my friends, my community, uh, issues pertaining to living in the South and the Gulf Coast, and also um, art, and that I wanted to make art. So I had this opportunity to go to the Penland School of Craft for the winter and use their print studio. And from there, someone introduced me to letterpress, and from there, someone pointed out that I could go to LSU as a resident of Louisiana, and I was unsure. I had always been unsure about college, but at this point I was like 30, 31, wasn't sure what I was doing, and I was like, "All right, I'll go and use all their printmaking equipment." So, a lot of my art practice kind of followed this, like, zine making and writing trajectory, and then when I got to school, I was like, I think I thought undergrad would be not below me, but maybe not enough of a challenge. So I was like, well, if I'm going to go to school, I'm also going to give myself this project every month so that I make sure that even though I'm making art for school, I'm also making something that's challenging or interesting for me. And so that I can try out the things I'm learning in different ways. So, which was absurd. It was so much more almost work. Uh, yeah, I did by my 3rd year, I would finally realized I talked to my professors, I'm like, "Can I get credit for this thing?" And they're like, "Yes,
Oh
yes,
my
you should
god.
take credit for this." And it was an undergrad, I wasn't a grad student, I was just, like, bopping along in my, like, intro classes. So, by my senior year, I had about 30 cards, and my senior show all you had to do for your senior show at LSU was hang 1 piece of art in this show, maybe 2, and I had an installation with handmade paper hot air balloons that were like up to 2 feet tall, hanging from the ceiling, plus multiple little ones, plus prints to show my teacher I could make a few prints, plus cards and responses, the responses in the baskets, and a wall of cards and a wall of portraits from everyone who wanted to send their portrait in who couldn't go to the show. It was so oh, and it could only be up for one night. It was
Oh
so much
my god, Hope. Talk about overachieving.
my and I was graduating. I wasn't graduating early, but I had my show at 3.5 years so that I could spend my last semester abroad. Um, yeah, so a friend of mine, Catherine Hunter, who runs Blackbird Letterpress, I had met during school and become her assistant, let me have an installation in her temporary art space. So it was really, whew, yeah. So parallel, there were like, I was making other artwork then, but I didn't often push my artwork as the thing I wanted to do. I tried for a little while and I was like, actually, I don't really care about selling art in that way. I want to keep my making my project and I want to I've focused more on writing now. And then I make
Mhm.
collage art for me and I teach it, which is a great medium for teaching. So
Yeah, yeah, so fun. That's like the last art class I took because I was like, the only way I'm ever gonna make art is if I take a class. That's so I'm just like realizing this like weird serendipity that you were Catherine Hunter's, did you say apprentice? I
yeah.
think maybe that's like I don't even know if I met you, but maybe I found your work in this that studio when I first visited. Like
Oh,
KDHL though has like almost the same name, and I'm like, "Pff, whoa, weird coincidence there."
yeah. Catherine was a friend of a friend in New Orleans. She was an adjunct at the time at LSU, and she was teaching the book arts class, which included letterpress. And I think I technically hadn't done the requirements to get into the class, but I talked my way in. And I'd already at that point taken 1 or 2 letterpress classes. So they let me be in her class. And one of the first things I did we talked about letterpress, I immediately dumped a whole drawer of type on the floor, which is a big mistake. And she was like, you need to sort that. And I need to tell everyone. I was like, I and, and I joke when I teach, intro to letterpress classes, I was like, amazingly, she then asked me to be her, not assistant, I was an intern for a bit at her shop, and then I worked as a shop assistant, and then a couple years later, I came back to work as a printer for a year. So
Yeah.
we're still friends.
That's awesome. I love stories like that, especially when there's some sort of like, small humiliation involved.
Yeah.
I have similar stories for a different class. Yeah. You're like, let me, it's a great way to like get attention, and like not. There was somebody who told me once that they like intentionally show up late to like the first two classes to like kind of piss off the professor, but like get attention. Then after that, they like improve.
Cool. My opposite approach, I try to be really great at the beginning so
I
that when
can't.
it's late in the end, 'cause I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I would die. I would feel like I'm so sorry. But I did think it was an interesting approach to, like, intentionally draw attention to yourself, even if it was in a negative way, because then you've become, like, imprinted on that person's brain.
yeah, as a teacher, I would just think that person's kind of annoying. Like, I would
Right,
be a little
right.
bothered, and
Yeah,
that
they would really have to try afterwards.
yeah, that's
Uh, okay, so what kind of and we've talked about this a little bit with, like, the what you want your like, the change that you wanna see in the world through your business, but what transformation do you provide to your clients, audience, customers, however you want to label them?
Yeah. I I think of that through my teaching, and so I talk a lot in any class that I teach about that people are able to be creative even when they don't think they can be. And so, like, even in letterpress classes where I have to be pretty strict about the format and there's a lot of procedures and rules and sort of steps that are pretty, you have to kind of follow those steps. I still want people to feel encouraged and that they can make stuff, and that even if um, all the steps they do don't appeal to them, there's other ways that this artwork can appeal to them, or they can work with someone who makes it like that. You can still be creative even if this thing seems intimidating, or if you can't draw, you can still make letterpress. And if you can't draw, there's still ways to get images on a page through letterpress, through images that already exist, through collage. So really trying to encourage people to be creative and recognize their own creativity and not be overwhelmed by the idea that they can't do something.
Yeah, I feel like I get that as like a creative or artist person a lot. Like, is that definitely your experience where people you're like, oh, I do X, Y, and Z, and people are like, oh, I could never do that. I'm not creative.
All the time. And I thought of it in school because I went to school for printmaking and you had to take drawing classes and I struggled. And I partly went to school to learn about drawing, and the teacher I had was pretty, he was tired. He was very ill, and so I didn't learn a lot of sort of the fundamentals. And so that I felt even more like I was struggling. And so when I got to my third or fourth life drawing class, um, taught by somebody else, she was just like, "What are you doing? Like, don't you see this?" And I'm like, "I am drawing it as I see it, and I see what you're pointing at, but I am like," and it was such a struggle. And so I had to take one more drawing class after that, and you had an option. You could take another life drawing class, which would have been with live models, or you could take a class they called drawing workshop, which was you drew for a week or two and then you had a crit, and the teacher was a painter, but whatever you presented as a drawing he accepted. I maybe pushed it a little bit and like kind of just, but I did intention, I was making work. I was at that point, it was my last semester of school, so I was just really involved with my own project. So I was trying to make stuff that was just different, kind of like taking a break from this other intense project I was working on. So I started making collage with handmade paper and cutting out the paper and adding things. I think the most extreme one I did is I just sewed scraps of handmade paper from my hot air balloons onto a sheet of paper, like ruffles that just built. And one person in class is like, "Is this a drawing? Maybe it's sculpture." And the teacher's like, "Okay, why is it a drawing? Why is it a sculpture?" And so it was very encouraging where the teacher was like, "I kind of don't, I want you to be able to talk about your work and I want you to think about your work, but I don't want you to not make work because you think it's not something." And I
Right.
was hugely, I can't even remember that teacher's name, which is embarrassing, but it was such a encouraging class and definitely informed how I teach.
I love those. I love hearing those stories of like moments that have impact. Like, I mean, this is what it sounds like to me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like really impacted your life and your way of thinking and even just approaching art and like potentially, influenced your entire trajectory based on this ability to be creative in whatever way you saw fit.
Definitely. I feel like I had like 3 major moments in school, none of them in the print department, none of them with my print professors who were fine, but with, yeah, that, like, that one with Catherine, where I, because I became her assistant and just learned about this whole world of letterpress through her, and my drawing teacher, and then one with another teacher who encouraged, I was in a ceramics class and I was also struggling, and this teacher, when you had a critique, he would take notes and then with your grade give you a typed up paragraph of notes from your class, which was kind of amazing for most teachers, especially undergrad. This was like an intro level 1 ceramics class, and I had it taped up on my next to my desk for like 10 years. But the idea is, he said in that class, in while talking about your project, you said you were struggling with it, but then you realized it kind of looked like all your other work. Think about why it reminds you of your other work, since your other work, my other work was 2D at the time, and push that. Like, your work can look like whatever, but just think about why it looks like that. And it changed how my senior project went. And it changed whenever I get really stuck in an artwork. I'm like, okay, what are the things I like about what I make? Let me emphasize those things in my work. And it always helps.
Mm, love that. For anybody who listens to this, I'm like, oh, art tips,
Yeah.
artist wisdom. um, okay, so now, gosh, there's like so many things I wanted to ask you about, but maybe I'll push us in a new direction and then swing us back around.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, okay, do you know the prizes that I am giving away for my book launch in relationship to you?
I
I
remember
can
we talked about them. I think it was a subscription, but can you remind me? Because
Yeah, I'm gonna give away 3 year-long subscriptions to the Keep Writing Project, which is a monthly postcard, right? So 12 postcards and then 3 people to receive those. Can you describe a little bit more to people what that is and include monetary value as well? That'd be great.
yeah. So I send a card every month. It looks like this. I have a little example. So when you get it in the mail, it looks like this, except that your name is on the address here. It's folded. It's got a little, the mirroring is throwing me off. There we go.
Yeah.
So a little bit about what's going on inside, and then this mystery back. So when you open it, there you go. It's upside down. So there's this art print on the bottom. Yeah. You keep, and it tells you a little on the back. So you keep this art print at the bottom, and then the top has a little bit of a story about why I'm writing about that art print, and then a question. So this one was for Pride Month. It says, "Be grade, do crime." Talks about the importance of celebrating Pride as a protest, and how allies can support their queer friends. It also has a little mention to maybe don't tell me about actual crime on the card since my name is on it. Um, and then on the back it says, "How will you celebrate Pride?" And then you mail that part back to me. I think once or twice a year, I send a card that's just a straight card that you keep, but you get 12 art prints to keep every month and at least 10 cards. And you can send them back anytime. I have friends who send them back. Sometimes I'll do a call because I'm like, I'm having a show. If you've been holding on to them, I sometimes get just an envelope of cards randomly from people. I Yeah, because my address has changed a number of times. So I get old cards pretty frequently. But you can send them whenever you like, and then they get posted to this a Tumblr site. It's usually $72 for a year. There's other ways to pay. You can pay monthly and lifetime subscriptions, but that's kind of the standard rate.
Okay. And I'm going to show the card that you designed for when I was soliciting life advice questions. But
Yeah.
before I do that, tell us like who are the people who have signed up and who is absolutely going to be like like happy about this prize?
Ooh, if you who like people who are excited about getting mail, people who appreciate handmade art. So the cards are either letterpress printed or risograph printed, depending on, and some old ones are screen printed, but I haven't done that in a while. Um, so if you like handmade art, if you're interested in printmaking, if you're interested in letters, or if you just want a prompt uh, for writing, I've been trying to work out some ways to get some more writing based prompts for people and trying to figure out how to make that work a little bit. So if you just want a prompt, because you could use this prompt, like "How will you celebrate Pride," as a prompt for a poem, as a prompt for a story. So if any of those things appeal to you, I think that would be. I get a lot of writers, a lot of printmakers, a lot of people who have pen pals and then send them to their, like, sign up for their pen pals. Like, here's another art project you might like.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely gifted at least a few subscriptions to family members and friends. And I would also add, like, that actually in a different interview that I did with Baby Cats of California, Catherine Peterson, that she was saying so many of her friends who become parents like can barely find the time or the energy for making art, and I'm like so guilty. I'm like, oh my god, I want to make art so bad, but I feel so drained by my children. But I feel like this, for like parents looking for a creative practice or moment in their life to even just scribble on one of these and like feel like you're participating in something bigger than yourself is very inspiring and like fun.
Yeah.
Um,
I also
so,
Oh,
and I'll show this postcard too that you designed for the Mostly Unanswerable Questions book. And you can find a gallery of these postcards on my website. Yeah, with all the responses that I got, many of which were written, some of which were drawn. Very fun. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I get some friends have gotten subscriptions for their kids, like friends who want their kids to be introduced to art. I have a couple friends who got lifetime subscriptions for their kids when they were born, and now that their kids are a little older, like I get some scribbles, or sometimes my friends write it with their kids. And not every month is a question that a 3-year-old maybe can answer. But also kids are pretty surprising and come up with things. So I think there's ways to ask the questions that kids can add. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to do that for my kids at some point. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot about the book. Are you ready?
yeah,
Okay, so what inspired you from the book, Mostly Unanswerable Questions? What did you find? Like, what were your takeaways? What did you think was fun or surprising?
yeah. I really appreciated the different points of view and different approaches to each question so that you had multiple sort of answers like this responding with your heart and your gut and responding in other ways so that you had like kind of different points of view sort of. I just really appreciated that, like different ways of thinking about the same question.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like that's been such a common theme, and it is one of my favorite pieces of the book is the way that I structured it. So, with the snail mail and then colliding with all of the different perspectives. Okay, and this is kind of leading into this other larger picture of like life advice. Like, what life advice or wisdom do you lean on and think is the most valuable to share with the world?
Oh man, I have so much. I have like things just taped up over my desk. I am that I'm looking at. Uh Staying creative no matter what. And also, oh man, rest, which I'm terrible at. I mentioned I'm sick and I'm still doing this today. I mean, I'm at home. Uh, yeah, I'm terrible at prioritizing rest, but giving yourself the okay to take breaks. That I am a very productive, busy person. I don't sit still very well. I don't sit down very well. Uh, but I at least don't feel guilty. I've been really working on not feeling guilty about when I do take a break, when I do take days off. Uh, for me, I'm just excited about a lot of the work I do, and so I want to be working on it. Like, I'm not mad that I'm so excited to work on writing or have this talk with you about this or work on the next postcard. Um, so I do I take days off and go swimming where I can't be anywhere near my work, and that works out. But prioritizing rest, I think, is a big one.
Yeah, very good. Love that. I am giving away a couple of copies of Rest is Resistance. So, like, preach church to that.
Yeah.
um, okay, so my next one is how can people support your business? But I also want to take a moment to say, like, let's swing back around. And you wanted to mention the archive piece that's happening for you, and then you mentioned that maybe a sale is coming up for the Keep Writing project potentially. Um,
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add that's coming up for you?
Yeah. One way to support me is that I have a Substack. It's Hope Amico, which is my full name, which is on my website. Oh, that's the easiest way to find me. But my Substack is every other week is my newsletter, and it'll tell you about the upcoming sale, which hopefully is happening this week, depending on this illness. Uh, so there'll be stuff around Keep Writing on sale for a couple weeks in July. And then every other week, I also post essays behind a paywall, but I also offer them for free, a recording of me reading them for free. So if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, I think that's the best way. I am on Instagram and I post somewhat frequently, but I feel like it's not always a great way for me anymore to kind of get the word out. But checking out my newsletter, it's short every other week. It's very rambly the other weeks. So
I love that. That's so sweet that you give away a recording of you reading it for free. That's such a fun, like, creative idea. Uh,
yeah, I've struggled back and forth about whether or not to have it behind a paywall, and part of it is that when it's behind a paywall, it's shorter in your inbox and it to me, it feels like less stuff in your inbox because you're like, read a paragraph and you're like, oh, I don't want to read the rest. So it's a way to share my writing with the people who want to read it. And I also give away free subscriptions to it. So it's less about making money from the essay writing and more about just getting it to the people who want it while
Yeah.
also continuing my newsletter. So
Yeah. Very wise. Love it. Okay. Are we missing anything?
I don't. Oh, I teach classes. All of that's on in my newsletter too, and on my website. I teach online and in person in Portland a bit. I teach collage, sometimes bookbinding and printing classes, and all of those are listed on my website under classes, so you can see what classes are up for registration through there.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, Hope Amico, everyone. Don't forget to jump on the book launch team for Mostly Unanswerable Questions. Once you are on the team for the latest updates, when you buy the book on August 13th and leave a review, you are entered into the awesome raffle with tons of fun prizes, including the Keep Writing Project subscriptions. So check out the show notes for links. Thank you so much for watching and check back for more interviews. Woohoo!
Thanks, Laura.